Can you feel it? That feeling like you should have paid more attention in school? Have you ever woken up and felt like the population was getting dumber every day? That charlatans are undermining education and spreading disinformation based on what feels warm and fuzzy? In this presentation we'll be looking at the previous so-called lesson and showing you the things I got wrong, why stupid ideas can easily hoodwink credulous people, and how sacred geometry can be used to say just about anything the author wishes. I'm Patchman, and I have a patch on my head. This signifies the removal of critical thinking and reason that enable people to believe all kinds of crazy junk. And it's what enables me to come up with such open-minded ideas as Earth being populated by space Jews and Martians. If you think about it, you can probably feel a sensation, or a bump, or an indentation in your skull where your critical thinking skills may have been removed. Can you feel it? I begin with a quote from an artist, Michael Evans, but this has absolutely no bearing on reality. It sounded cute though, and didn't stop my imagination running riot.
What if we could understand the fundamental geometry and movement that light moved by? What if it was a three-dimensional solid form that we could map?
The astute among you will have immediately noticed a flaw in the idea of light being a solid because it contradicts absolutely everything that the scientific method has found out about light so far. My question then doesn't even need answering. Pulling items out of our asses feels great, so let's recall where it led us. I quote Einstein. Whenever you want to sound scientific, it's important to quote a great mind, in the hope that some of their credibility will rub off on you. Quote mining is also a great way to misrepresent something. This is cherry picking, and we'll come back to that shortly.
While doing research on Wikipedia, you find pages upon pages with bajillions of words describing these crazy formulas revealing the secrets of the universe, everything we know in modern science.
Those crazy formulae describe reality, but ignoring them plays a key role when it comes to making up stuff later. By using some clips of geeky-looking characters, it's easy to appeal to superficial stereotypes. Look at all the scary equations. It looks like hard work, doesn't it? You probably didn't even notice the outstanding hypocrisy of appealing to the authority of Einstein on one hand, whilst dismissing hard-won knowledge with the other. I cozy up to science later on when I use phrases like, what we know in the field of science. It makes it sound like I'm presenting knowledge with accuracy and care, but as we'll see later, that's questionable. Science is hard, but making stuff up is easy, so by doing that instead, it's easy to misrepresent real science while playing to your credulity. The audience can be asked questions that make them doubt science and its benefit to their lives. Combined with the subtle and not so subtle in some lessons, conspiracy implication, this fosters your doubts about real science and further isolates you from it. These form a resonance of negative thinking about science, which open the portal in your mind to pure horseshit, so you can become a one-dimensional being. Have you noticed too how, when it suits, I portray scientists as crazy looking? In this piece, note how I also refer to unnamed scientists.
Some scientists have actually been known to cut infinite numbers when they find them.
I don't actually say who they are, I don't give any context, but instead just show a cartoon of a nefarious-looking scientist, apparently cheating to find the bottom. I make it sound like a bad thing. Nowhere did I tell you that using numbers to no greater precision than is necessary is perfectly normal and valid. There's no point using pi to infinite decimal places, or even to a billion decimal places, if 10 will do. However, it was just easier to make it sound like scientists cheat. I claim that scientists don't think of the infinite. To justify this claim, let's just watch it again.
Because they're deliberately looking for finiteness, instead of embracing the infinite nature of reality. Check out the movie Black Hole to see this happening in action.
That's right, I referred you to a movie to back up a claim of how scientists behave. People used to have wooden eyes. Check out Pirates of the Caribbean for evidence. And snakes can talk too. Check out The Jungle Book. Creationists, you might want to use that one. You've probably noticed that movies aren't real, so you would probably find yourself questioning why I would be stupid enough to use a movie as an example of scientists not thinking of the infinite and cheating to cut numbers. You may then ask yourself why you were stupid enough to swallow this bilge. Let's get back to the fallacies. See if you can spot the cherry picking when I looked at the Wikipedia page on mass.
On Wikipedia, mass is said to represent an amount of matter, but then it goes on to say that the term matter has no universally agreed upon definition.
Did you notice that I left out the first part of the sentence that gave context? It actually said, For everyday objects and energies well described by Newtonian physics, mass has also been said to represent an amount of matter. I've left out the context of scale, and leaving out has also been in my narration also skips over the fact that this little phrase links this paragraph to the first, which is highly inconvenient to the false construct I'm building. We'll come to that. I also left out the remainder, but this breaks down, for example, at very high speeds or for subatomic particles. How did I miss that? I'm discussing subatomic particles and photons, so if I included it, obviously it would render my argument void before it even begins. By making it sound as if mass is defined by what is said, and that the cherry-picked definition depends on matter, I can stack these together and then ask a fallacious question.
How can we say that light has no mass when we can't even agree upon a definition or understanding of what matter and subsequently mass even are?
But did you see what I did? I've now included mass as something that isn't agreed upon. This is bullshit. In fact, the article defines what mass is in the very first sentence. I left that bit out of my quote mining, and you weren't going to bother checking even though I showed all the wording on screen. Mass is a property of the physical body which determines the body's resistance to being accelerated by a force and the strength of its mutual gravitational attraction to other bodies. Do you really believe I missed the fact that mass is defined when its basic definition appears before the fragments I cherry-picked from the text? If it were really the case that we can't agree on what mass is, how can anyone validly argue that light has it? To illustrate just how dumb that is, let's claim that we can't agree on what flibbertigibbet even is. Let's then ask if light and small particles have flibbertigibbet. It's as pointless as asking, what if light is cuddly? Another falsehood will really help to guide you along the path of woo-woo I'm shoveling here, so here's the next one.
Because of all of our fancy equations as described earlier, we have kind of thrown all ideas about what light could actually look like out the window.
Even though it's an idea that I just pulled out of my backside. Moving swiftly on, the next question, if you're open mind.
What if we could know the shape of light? What if we could actually define what the structure of light, as well as every particle and thing in existence, were?
Particles don't look like anything because they in themselves are not solid. Macroscopic matter is solid because of repulsion between electrons, not because it's made up of solid particles that look like anything. The alert among you will have noticed that earlier in the same video, whilst I was casting doubt on science, I stated the major flaw with the idea of light and particles looking like anything.
We have reached a point where things get so small that we can no longer define what they look like.
I actually got something right, and so of course it had to be ignored in order to concoct another 12 minutes of baseless drivel about light having shape and mass. Having dismissed relevant facts and deciding regardless that light should look like something, we can now assert that solid light should take the form of a geometric shape based on nothing whatsoever, and we can simply decide what shape we'd like it to be. When we pull stuff out of our asses like this, we're free to decide what the endpoint should be according to what sounds cute, shoehorn in a narrative to get there, and then stand back and be amazed that everything is somehow connected. Let's pick up the subject of mass again and see how these techniques can be applied.
What if mass and no mass was not just about the speed that it traveled, but also the density of the information held within the shape?
This is just word salad. Like a creationist, I never actually define what I mean by information, let alone how it has density, and let alone how that determines whether something has mass. However, I can use an analogy that doesn't help in any way whatsoever.
See, water has a heavy density, but when it heats up, it translates into vapor and rises into the air. It takes a 90-degree turn into another dimension of form.
The word translate sounds a bit more mystical than evaporate. The bit about moving into another dimension is nonsense. Both liquid water and water vapor exist within the same 3 spatial dimensions. But you love the word dimension, don't you? Whether a water molecule leaves its liquid state to become a gas depends only on its kinetic energy.
As the clouds become packed, denser and denser, with so much information packed within them, eventually they have no choice but to release, and all of the water comes pouring down. It's changing from a high-speed particle into a denser one, based on the density of the information within the droplet, as well as the speed that it was traveling.
If you attended school, you know that density is simply the mass of some substance divided by its volume. I'm claiming here that water increases in density when droplets combine. Well, we can see from the equation that it must either increase in mass or decrease in volume. This doesn't happen. If I can't even present basic information about density correctly, why on earth would you pay any attention to anything I say about particle physics? Unless, of course, you're so open-minded that you think this water droplet analogy has any credibility whatsoever. I don't actually state what information water droplets contain, but move on to give you inaccurate information about photosynthesis.
A burst of energy from the sun travels towards the Earth as both a wave and a particle. It has properties of both, and it's moving at the speed of light, and passes through a plant. That plant then absorbs the information and energy that it needed from the wave particle that passed through it.
By asserting that light carries information, I've connected it to my irrelevant water analogy using just that one word. But this is as close as I get to answering the question as to whether water and light have the same properties. You can see that the one property they supposedly have in common is one I simply made up and didn't define.
The plant then uses that information, the light speed particles that it took from the sunlight, and uses it to create something with mass, merging them with water and other plant matter to create sugars and other nutrients.
This is bullshit too. The process of photosynthesis is well understood and well documented. Did you notice again how the parts I got wrong just happened to suit my narrative? Having spun this false picture of photosynthesis, you were ready to believe that light is a solid, that it holds undefined information and even mass, even though the prior material does nothing to explain how light could be solid. After all, I said the plant needed information from light, not mass. It's time for another colossal leap of nonsense.
In addition to supporting the theory of light being solid and holding information, and even mass, doesn't that also seem to fit the model of the Higgs boson too?
What the f***? Of course, I'm referring to my flawed description of the Higgs mechanism that was earlier in the video.
The popular Higgs boson is the particle that is created upon the light speed particle merging with the Higgs field. According to our formulas, this boson, this particle, is supposed to come out with it. I think there's an important piece of information that we're missing here.
My bastardization of photosynthesis doesn't even fit my own misrepresentation of the Higgs boson, let alone the actual model. The caveat that I could be wrong doesn't really help things here. The disservice to genuine science and your education is already done. You already have a false picture of the Higgs mechanism, you've already been told we don't agree what mass is, and you've been through a journey of nonsense that builds upon the initial flawed assertion that light has mass and shape to justify itself. Surely if I cared about whether I was wrong, I wouldn't distort facts to suit my narrative in the first place. The tsunami of invalid assertions continues though.
If light is a solid, it can be both a wave and a particle simultaneously.
See how I didn't even attempt to justify this.
If light is a solid, it can have both density or nothing inside it at all.
Word salad, it's completely meaningless. In this section I declare that electricity and magnetism are two separate forces. This is wrong, but just happens to suit the conclusions I reach. Again, what a remarkable coincidence.
Electricity is particles, and magnetism is waves. Electricity is male. Magnetics are female. Curves and points.
It's meaningless horseshit, but it depends on my false claim that they are two separate forces. If I got the facts right, I'd have no horseshit premises on which to pile up even more horseshit. Now we get to arbitrarily decide what light looks like. How do I go about doing this? Basically, I just made some stuff up using some shapes that looked nice. I may as well have been playing with fuzzy felts for all the good it did. So how does the process of getting so much basic information wrong work in the context of sacred geometry? It all fits in with the flower of life, which we saw in earlier lessons, and I want to build upon it more. It's important as it connects everything together and is the blueprint for filling your head with nonsense. If we look at the repeating circular motif in the flower of life, we see that it looks just like a puckered anus. This is your mind's arse. My mind's arse is very active. I was talking to some friends and they gave me an amazing idea which led to some fabulous new discoveries. By mapping it into third dimension, we produced this shape, taking it to the next dimensional level of consciousness that mirrors our own existence. This is the cosmic ring piece. We see this pattern everywhere in multi-celled animals. The cosmic ring piece, when acting as your mind's arse, is the source of every crap idea that you or I have ever had. But there's more. If we take one of these shapes, which looks a bit like some leaves, we can ask ourselves, what would it look like in 3 dimensions? The most perfect shape is a circle, so if we rotate the shape through 360 degrees of a circle in 3-dimensional space, we get this. If we examine it closely, we can see that it's even more perfect than the shape we conjured up as the shape of light. It's perfectly smooth, and we can immediately see that this is the shape that would glide most freely through the cosmic ring piece. And every platonic solid fits inside it, allowing them all to pass through. Using sacred geometry, we have discovered the true shape of every nonsense thought that has passed through your and my mind's arse, or cosmic ring piece. I was blown away by this idea, but there's more. Thoughts grounded in reality look like this. Why? Because I say so. And they don't pass through your mind's arse. How do we know? It just feels right, doesn't it? We can see that the highest density of stupid thoughts can be achieved when they are packed with their points joined in beautiful 6-fold symmetry. You can see that if we choose any stupid idea, like light being a solid, we can make this our conclusion, and through any path of other nonsense we can arrive back at our conclusion and justify it to ourselves in the Hippy Thoughtspace. It's a powerful concept, and one which produces no beneficial output whatsoever. If we take the path of crap ideas out of the flower of life, we can see that they line up perfectly as turd nuggets that would flow through the convoluted path of your mind rectum and through the cosmic ring piece of your 7th chakra. Putting the line of turd nuggets in a straight line, we see beautiful waves just like those we saw in earlier lessons. We can see that other, more densely packed stupid ideas can fit inside them, in perfect harmony, and so on at higher and higher frequencies, leading to an infinite density of nonsense thoughts. Crap ideas normally flow through the cosmic ring piece one at a time, but they can flow through at a much higher speed, with no gaps in between them, in a kind of mental diarrhea. This is how the space Jews made it unchecked into a video. Back to the flower of life, we have points and curves. The points where the smooth thought shapes intersect are incredibly dense. We can see that they're connected to each other by nonsense thoughts. This pattern of nonsense thoughts also forms an interlocking pattern of cosmic ring pieces, showing the perfect synergy of crap ideas and the cosmic ring pieces through which they pass. It's an interconnected web of stupid ideas and arseholes, enclosed in perfectly circular reasoning. It may sound crazy, and it's just an idea, but I think this theory brings everything together and explains a lot.
See how easy it is? You can make any claim by prattling around with shapes, because you can simply assign whatever meaning you like to them. It's what children do when they play with shapes. It matters not one jot whether you think an idea sounds nice or not, or whether you think it makes sense. That is not how the truth of claims is established. And as we've shown, if the initial premises are fundamentally flawed, the rest of the argument has nothing to stand on. And if the rest is just a bunch of non sequiturs and even more false assertions, then it is nonsensical. The upshot then is that the 17 minutes spent trying to convince you that light is a solid was nothing more than an incoherent waste of your time, and you would have found this out by making a few simple checks and thinking things through. Just because someone occasionally gets a few facts right, that doesn't mean everything they present is correct. And if they're using the occasional fact to try and put some gloss on a steaming pile of horse crap, then question their motives. Why do they get so much basic information wrong? Are they more incompetent than Jar Jar Binks, or simply a charlatan, making a whole load of rubbish up, crapping on every scientific discipline going, and then saying, "I could be wrong," helps precisely nobody. People who care about whether they're getting their facts right get most of their facts right. They don't get most of them wrong in a manner that conveniently fits their narrative. They also correct their mistakes and don't need built-in caveats. If the person making the extraordinary claims isn't prepared to back up those claims with reliable sources, there's usually a good reason for that. They don't exist. If they have to resort to quote mining to make their case fit, or their only source is someone's website where they too make empty claims about the nature of reality, then parroting those claims does nothing to substantiate them. You could value what is demonstrably right and effective, or you can blindly accept claims about Martians, space Jews, magic rocks, and physics-defying horse shit. Which do you think will help you grow as a person, and which won't? Blue pill or red pill? Thanks for watching.
Maybe the speed of the particle is interdependent upon the information that was carried in the form. Everything has breath. Everything breathes and everything lives. This trion ray is the geometry of a straight line.